Okay, so on the back transom here, you can see there was a transducer here at some point. I've got this Lowrance mount with a Humminbird transducer in it, and this is the old speed sensor. If you come underneath, you know, it's not in a bad spot. I think the ideal spot for the Skimmer transducer is going to be right where the water speed sensor is. So I'm going to remove both of those transducers there and see what I got. I also have the side imaging transducer, the StrusctureScan, which I need to put on, and we'll see what we get there too. So this StrusctureScan transducer is a two-piece bracket. You got the piece there that will go to the transom, and then your transducer will mount up here. So you can see the aluminum piece will go on the top here. You feed those screws in from the bottom, so they'll be on this side of the transducer. You want them that way so that's the cleanest flow of water over them. And then that bolt to that washer through the bracket assembly there, to the next washer, to the nut on the end, and then the two screws to go to the transom. So that's basically how you do it. I'm going to put this together and just mock it up where I want. Okay, so this is the order you install the parts for the Skimmer transducer. Bolt to washer through here, this insert on this side, transducer in the center, that insert on the other side. And you can see how they'll fit in there. And this is the part most people mess up. The rubber washers go up against here, washer, and then nut on the other end. A lot of people put one rubber washer on each side. This is how it's meant to go. Two screws into the hull, and that's it. One thing they do recommend in the manual is when you put this on, your transducer cable come up through here. I don't recommend that, because if you ever have to replace your transducer, you got to take that out. You got to pull this whole bracket off. If you have the transducer come up here, you can just undo the bolt that goes through and then leave this bracket on. You don't have to mess with these screw holes. And you can see that dot on the metal bracket at the top. That dot corresponds with these letters. There's A, B, C, D, and E. Basically those will allow you to adjust for the angle of your hull. I always just start at A, and usually that works fine. I've never had an issue. I don't really mess around with that too much. Just make sure both sides are set on the same letter. So that's now set on letter A. That's what it looks like assembled before it goes on to the hull and it's tightened down. So I decided to use the existing holes for that transducer bracket. I think that's probably in one of the best spots. You know, I could move it over to center it between the two ribs here on the hull. You know, there is a row of rivets just running up the hull there, just to the right of where the transducer is. So it's not 100% ideal. I don't care about drilling holes in my boat, so I'll just move it if I have to. As far as height goes, this line down the center of the transducer, basically what you want to start with is to have that below the bottom of the hull. If you look square on, it's about at the level of the hull, maybe a little bit lower. You know, you can play around with tilting it a little bit, depending on the attitude of the boat in the water when it's running. Generally, I find if you tilt them in a little bit, that helps. This is where you can play too if you really want to, with those letters on the side. If you don't get the right angle, you can mess around with that and try B and then C and D if you have to. So that's basically what you want. Now, where I have those screw holes, it's at the highest it possibly can go, and I think it may even be a little bit too low in the water right now. But if I do have to lower it, I can. I would not go any higher than this. Now, when you add in the StrusctureScan transducer, that will challenge you quite a bit on a hull like this. With a deep V hull, it's pretty easy because it'll sit lower in the water if you put it closer to the center line. If you put it up here on a deep V hull, it'll sit higher. what we don't want to have happen is have them at the same height. So the beam from the side scan transducer is blocked by the traditional transducer. The other thing you got to be careful of is where the motor is. So you can see where the motor is now. That's going to block the beam. So when I'm using the side scan, I will have to tilt the motor up. Now the other thing too is if I were to put the transducer where I was holding it there, when I turn that motor, you know, I got to be sure that it's not going to interfere. And in this case it won't, but still I don't like it that close. I think what I'm going to end up doing is mounting it over here. Now you want to keep your StrusctureScan transducer and 2D transducer fairly close together, because this houses the down imaging crystal as well, and you want the down imaging to look like what you're seeing on your traditional sonar. If we were to mount this transducer on the other side of the hull, they're going to be about 3-4 feet apart, and it may not look exactly the same. There's also a feature on the units called downscan overlay, and that allows you to overlay the downscan onto the sonar, so you can see both on one screen. So if they're close together, you know, within a foot, they say, you'll have the best results that way.